ॐ श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादशङ्करं लोकशङ्करं। त्वमेव माता च पिता त्वमेव बन्धुश्च सखा त्वमेव विद्या द्रविणं त्वमेव सर्वं मम देवदेव। श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तिसुदेशिकेन्द्रं द्वैपायनं सूत्रकृतं मुनीन्द्रं श्रीशङ्करं भाष्यकृतं यतीन्द्रं मद्देशिकञ्चापि नमामि विद्यै। ॐ नमो ब्रह्मादिभ्यो ब्रह्मविद्यासम्प्रदायकर्तृभ्यो वंशऋषिभ्यो महद्भ्यो नमो गुरुभ्यः। सर्वोपप्लवरहितप्रज्ञानगणः प्रत्यगर्तो ब्रह्मैवाहमस्मि। Pranams everyone. In the introduction to Vedanta series, we saw that human goals or human pursuits can be divided into four: Artha, Kama, Dharma and Moksha. Moksha being the ultimate goal for every jiva, for every individual. And for that, the Shastras, which are six-layered, they have given structure, the methodology and the infrastructure to achieve these goals. And in terms of the infrastructure, we saw them as Varna and Ashrama. Varna are the four Varnas at the society level, and then the Ashrama at the individual life stage level. In the individual lifestyle, there are four stages. There is Brahmacharya, Grahastha, Vanaprastha and Sannyasi. And as a Brahmacharya, you understand the Shastras, you understand what should be the final goal and what should be the sadhanas for us to pursue to achieve the final goal. And in terms of the sadhanas, to achieve the final goal, there are three steps or three sets of sadhanas. The first one is Karma Yoga. The second one is Upasana Yoga. And the third one is Jnana Yoga. Karma Yoga is about converting all our actions into Ishvara Arpana, contributing as much as possible to the society, to the environment, to the fellow human beings, to our parents and in-laws, to our ancestors, and to the rishis. So there are Pancha Mahayajnas. And the Karma Yoga will result in Chitta Shuddhi, where our mind will become pure, or a mind without too much of strong likes and dislikes. The mind gets irritated, can get disturbed whenever there is a strong like or a dislike. And therefore, the idea behind Karma Yoga is to reduce these likes and dislikes. The second one is Upasana Yoga, where we talk about meditating upon Ishvara. And we saw there were four types of meditation. First one is to relax the mind. The second one is to concentrate on a single focused object. And for that we can use Manasa Parayanam, Manasa Puja and Manasa Japa to be able to focus our mind. Two other forms of meditation that were prescribed for expanding the mind and for adding good values in our personality, the value meditation. So that is Upasana Yoga. With this, the mind becomes strong and focused. So a pure focused mind is what is needed for us to get into Jnana Yoga, which is the third step. Jnana Yoga has got 3 steps to it: Shravanam, Mananam and Nididhyasanam. Shravanam is systematic and continuous learning of scriptures under a competent guru over a lengthy period of time. So it has to be structured, systematic, it has to be continuous, it cannot be irregular, it has to be regular, and it has to be over a long period of time. This knowledge does not come overnight. And then the second step is called Mananam, where we are able to clarify our doubts, especially with regards to what we experience and what the Shastras say. And once we have doubtless knowledge, we have to make it into our personality, make that knowledge our personality. And that is called as Nididhyasana, where we ensure that whatever habitual mistakes we do, as in recognizing ourselves to be the body and mind, as against what the Shastras have taught us, we try to overcome that habit and be able to negate this body and mind even when we are having this body and mind. So that is the third step called Nididhyasana. The question is, are all these yogas that we saw are compulsory? Yes, Karma Yoga, Upasana Yoga, Jnana Yoga are all compulsory for all people. There are no optional yogas. As in, if somebody wants to attain moksha, they will have to follow Karma, Upasana and Jnana Yoga. Is it possible for us to just go into Jnana Yoga because that is the final step? Can I skip Karma Yoga and Upasana Yoga and go directly to Jnana Yoga? You can, but you will not be successful in getting moksha. Any person to get this knowledge would have to have a pure mind and a focused mind. And that can be achieved only through Karma and Upasana Yoga. So if somebody has attained or goes into Jnana Yoga suddenly without actually doing Karma or Upasana, or somebody becomes a Jnani at a very young age without going through Karma Upasana Yogas, how do we actually interpret it? How do we actually take it? Or how can we explain that? That's because they would have gone through those sadhanas in their previous janmas. So question is, so from here we can actually derive, if this is what Shastras say, then we can easily derive from this statement that the mind is one thing which comes to us in every life. The same mind comes to us, because if somebody has done for Jnana Yoga, for somebody to get Jnana, he has to have a pure mind, focused mind. And if somebody is able to get into Jnana Yoga in this life without going through Karma and Upasana Yoga, we say that he has got already the pure mind and focused mind. So that means, and we say that he has done the sadhanas in his previous janmas. So from here we can derive quickly that mind is one thing that comes that we take along with us in our next life, to our next life. Okay, so now Karma Yoga and Upasana Yoga are not optional yogas. Jnana Yoga is impossible without Karma and Upasana Yoga. Karma and Upasana Yoga is incomplete without Jnana Yoga. So to attain moksha, it has to be this way. And we saw the role of ashrama dharma. The 4 ashramas that were created, designed, is for pursuing these 3 yogas only. Although they are not really watertight, airtight compartments, there is a domination of a particular yoga in a particular stage of life. So in Brahmacharya Ashrama, we typically study the theory. What is life? What is Ishvara? What is the goal? We study that. And in Grihastha Ashrama, it is Karma Yoga Pradhana lifestyle. So in Grihastha Ashrama, we should do more and more Karma Yoga. And in Vanaprastha, it is more on the Upasana Yoga. So Upasana Yoga Pradhana lifestyle is Vanaprastha. And in Sannyasa Ashrama, it is more Jnana Yoga Pradhana Ashrama, Jnana Yoga Pradhana lifestyle. So these 3 different infrastructures are presented for predominantly practicing these 3 yogas. So we do not, even if we do not go through these 4 ashramas in today's terms, we will have to make appropriate modifications in our lifestyle to be able to follow these sadhanas. And what is the advantage at the end of this moksha? Moksha is whether there is dharma, artha, kama in my lifestyle. The presence of dharma, artha, kama, or the absence of dharma, artha, kama is not going to affect me. I can enjoy the presence of it. I can also enjoy the absence of it. Generally, what we see ourselves, we are not happy with ourselves. I am alone in a house. If there is power cut or there is no mobile phone, I feel I am alone. I feel lonely. I'm surprised. I'm sometimes even afraid to be alone. So we need always the another person in our life. Either at least to fight, we need another person, or at least to complain about, we need another person in our life. And our mind is full of likes and dislikes, and that I need to share with somebody, because I am not able to live happily with myself. I need somebody to share with. Moksha is about getting the Purnatvam, completeness, infiniteness. Atmanyeva atmana tushtaha. That is how Bhagavan describes moksha in Bhagavad Gita. Being happy with oneself. Atmanyeva atmana tushta. This is an important lakshana for a jnani, for a moksha purusha. So the question is, should I actually follow this? So the question whether I should follow only after this. The Shastra is only for after retirement, not for young people. That is not true. The Shastra is needed at all times. And it gives, even when we follow this Karma Yoga and Upasana Yoga, it has some bit of Drishta Palam. It is able to give some kind of contentment and happiness in our day-to-day lives also. Of course, moksha is the permanent, infinite happiness. But as we follow dharma, as we follow Karma Yoga, as we follow Upasana Yoga, as we study more and more scriptures, initially there will be a stage where we are not able to accept certain things because it is not in line or it is completely against my current personality or my current likes and dislikes. But once we are able to cross over them, we can see that this lifestyle will bring us happiness and contentment. And this is the vision of our scriptures, to actually help us remain happy. So now, coming back to this Jnana Yoga, I said we had seen Karma Yoga, what are the Panchamaha Yajnas, we had seen that. And when we discussed Upasana Yoga, we discussed about the different forms of meditation. And when we discussed about Jnana Yoga, we said it is about self-knowledge and it is about three major things we said. One is, what we said was Jiva Swarupam. Who am I? So this Jnana Yoga is about three major topics. Jiva Swarupam, Ishvara Swarupam, and Jagat Lakshana. What is the universe? And it is about, so Jagat Vichara, we do a Vichara on what is this universe. So Jiva Swarupam, we understand Jiva Swarupam, we understand Ishvara Swarupam, and we do a Jagat Vichara. And the idea is, and to identify what is the relationship between these three. How are they related? Because if we will cover everything here. So I am there, I want to know about myself. And when I say Jagat, this universe, I want to know about everything around me, including the people around me, things around me, this nature, everything. So that is Jagat Vichara. And we also know there is somebody called Ishvara. So who is this Ishvara? What is this Ishvara? We need to understand. With that we would be able to cover the entire thing, whatever we need to know about in this world. So from now we will start on Jnana Yoga, and while Karma Yoga and Upasana Yoga took about 1 or 2 classes, this Jnana Yoga will take a longer time for us to do Vichara about. So from today onwards we will be discussing more on Jnana Yoga. To start with, even before we enter Jnana Yoga, we said Jnana Yoga is about Jiva Vichara, Ishvara Vichara, Jagat Vichara. Before we get into Ishvara, we need to understand about, we'll do a small Vichara on Bhakti. What is Bhakti? Because Bhakti has got various meaning in different contexts, and therefore it can also be a confusing topic also. So we'll do a small Vichara on Bhakti. Bhakti means love towards Ishvara. That is how we understand, right? Love towards Ishvara. But Bhakti internally actually means only love. Any love towards a higher principle is called as Bhakti. And many people say, some people say Bhakti is the sadhana to reach Ishvara. They say Bhakti is an easy sadhana. Bhakti alone is enough to attain moksha. So there are a lot of these statements we would have heard from various people. In reality, most people have a wrong understanding of these concepts. It is the same wrong understanding that people have about dhyana, wrong understanding about bhakti also. They have their own interpretations, or through hearsay they have their own understanding, basically to overcome their, sometimes to popularize what they want to, or sometimes to overcome the laziness that they have inherently. Bhakti is the love that we show to Bhagavan or Ishvara. So what does Shastra say about bhakti? We'll see them later. But bhakti is generally any kind of love that we show towards Ishvara. Thinking about Bhagavan, doing seva to the Bhagavan, worshipping Bhagavan, praying, sitting and praying in front of Bhagavan, or even seeking Bhagavan, that tapam that you may have in your mind is also bhakti. This is generally our understanding. Bhakti means these things. In our Shastra, bhakti has got two meanings, with two different set of meanings. One, bhakti is the devotion to Ishvara. And what is devotion? Basically, we said love. How do you define devotion or bhakti? Love towards a higher principle is called as bhakti or devotion. Generally, love towards each different people will mean different thing. Any love that we show to a higher principle is called as bhakti. The second meaning of bhakti is also used as a course of discipline, like a sadhana, like a spiritual sadhana to achieve this spiritual goal. As in bhakti yoga, they say bhakti yoga to achieve moksha. So when we say bhakti yoga, it means it's a sadhana to achieve moksha. We will discuss about bhakti yoga later on as a means to achieve Ishvara. We will see that later. Let us come back to the first meaning. Devotion to Ishvara, bhakti. As I said, whenever love is directed to a higher principle, which we revere, which is sacred, then that love is called as devotion or bhakti. So reverential love is called as bhakti or devotion. That's why we have Matru Bhakti, Pitru Bhakti, Desha Bhakti, Acharya Bhakti. So any love that we direct towards a higher principle, we use the term bhakti. Superior, or it is holy, or it is deserving, or it is respect worthy. So not just the age, it could be any of these things. That's where we use the term bhakti. Guru Bhakti, Desha Bhakti, Matra Bhakti, Pitra Bhakti, Ishvara Bhakti, everything. So we saw that it is love. It is a form of love. Now the question is, when we discuss love, are there different forms of love? So we'll try to do a small vichara on love. And our scriptures say that all forms of love that a human being shows, any love that a human being shows towards anything, can be classified as it is being directed only to three things. So it can come in one of these three categories only. Any love that we show to anybody in this world can be classified into one of these three. The first one is love towards goal. Whatever goal I want to accomplish in my life, whatever ends I want to accomplish, I will love them. I want to get this job. I want to get this job, which means I love this job, and therefore I want to get it. I want to buy this house. I love that house. Therefore I want to buy it. I like that particular jewelry, and therefore I want to have it. So the goal is one's category. Love towards goal is one category, or love towards various ends and goals. Whatever we want to acquire or accomplish. I want to accomplish job, get into a job, I want to accomplish that, I want to acquire that house, acquire the jewelry, acquire that, or even a relation. It is also comes under love towards goal. Then the second category of love is love towards the means. What I understand is, for me to accomplish that particular end, I would have to go through various means, because only the means can accomplish the end. And since the means are useful to accomplish the end, I start beginning to love the means also. So if I want to acquire that house, I may have to work hard. So I will not complain about working hard. I will enjoy working hard because I want to accomplish that end result. I want to get that person in my life, and therefore I am willing to sacrifice a lot of things in my life, willing to stay up late, willing to do anything. So I start and I do it lovingly, because it is the means for me to accomplish the end. So I start loving the means. And therefore, that is the second category, love of the means. Then the third one is love towards oneself. Everybody in this world everyone loves himself or herself. It is called as self-love. It is there. So there is no need to explain. Every one of us love ourselves. And an easy example would be to know whether I love myself or not, which will be anyway true, is whenever I want to accomplish something and I am not able to accomplish, if I know that somebody else has been actually involved in me not able to achieve that goal, somebody has created a problem for me, or somebody's mistake has created a problem for me. If somebody else had done a mistake, I get angry with them. But if achieving this goal, if I am not able to achieve because of my own fault, I don't become angry with myself. I become sad. General tendency is to become sad. When it is with others, I can show anger, When it is towards me, I will be sad. And that is a clear example of how much we love ourselves. So now, as I said, there are three categories: love towards goal, love towards means, and love towards self. Is there a gradation in this love? Yes, there is a gradation. Our Shastras point out that there is a gradation in these three. The love of the means is the least in its intensity. A love of the end is mediocre, and love of oneself is the highest form of love with the highest intensity. And we'll see why. The reason for the love of means is not for the sake of means. Suppose, for example, but for the sake of the end. For example, a mother loves the kid so much, and for the sake of the kid, the mother would be happy to stay up late. If the kid is sick, the mother would be staying up late. She will not be complaining. But if the same person would have to stay up late for somebody else, then the person would be unhappy. So the love for the means is dependent on the love for the end. And once the end is accomplished, then the attitude towards the means is also completely different, and they will not often now love them, continue to love them. For example, generally in this world, rich people are more loved than the poor people. That is because the rich people have an access to an end called wealth. And as long as the end called wealth can be accomplished through these rich people, they are loved. The moment money goes away from them, thereafter you see the rich people are not loved as much. Most of the time, the love for people is love for the means to accomplish the end, and more often than not, money is the end. Generally, money is the end for which we even love people. So love for the end is superior than the love for the means. And between the love for the end and love for the self, the love for self is superior. For example, I love various ends, hoping that they will give me comfort, happiness, safety, and all those things. The moment I see that a particular thing does not give me happiness, does not give me the joy, does not give me the comfort, then my love for the end gets changed. I change my love to a different thing, or I start disliking that end. For example, I buy a vehicle, I think it is going to give me comfort, but sooner or later I find that the vehicle keeps giving me problems. The one that I had loved seeing in the showroom, that I wanted it badly, now I don't like it anymore, because it is not giving me the happiness that I thought it will give me. It is not giving me the safety and comfort that I thought it will give me. Similarly, with regards to relations, I love a person, I want to get that person in my life, And the moment that person does not give me happiness or safety or comfort that I am looking for, my love for that other person changes. So my love for myself is vastly superior than the love for other ends. And that's why in Upanishads they say, Atmanastu kamaya sarvam priyam bhavati. Nobody loves themselves more than anything. Nobody loves themselves. Everybody loves themselves the most. Atmanastu kamaya sarvam priyam bhavati. And if we have to grade this, so coming back to summarize, means love is manda or the lowest, the end love is madhyama, and the self love is the ultimate, uttama. Manda, madhyama, uttama. So the self love is the highest in terms of intensity. Now that we have seen this vichara on love, let us try to apply this on the field of Ishvara. If we have bhakti, if a person loves Ishvara, what will be the intensity of that love? And the scriptures point out that the intensity of the love depends upon how you look upon Ishvara. And therefore, it again can be classified into three: Manda, Madhyama and Uttama. And Manda Bhakti, Manda means dull or selfish, you can say. Manda Bhakti, dull or selfish Bhakti, majority of the people fall under this category, where they look upon Ishvara as a means to achieve various worldly ends. In our life, we want to attain so many things. Whatever we want to achieve, we call it as sadhyam, right? So we want to attain, we might be sick, so we want to attain health. So health becomes sadhyam. We are in financial trouble, so money becomes important. Money becomes the sadhyam. Our relations in life may give us trouble. We want them to change, and therefore that becomes our sadhyam. So there are various sadhyams in life. And we experience sorrow, we experience pain, we experience situations that we don't like. And when we experience all this sorrow, pain and all these situations where we initially think we are in control, then we understand, we realize that there is something bigger and stronger than us. Initially, I thought it is all in my hands, and then I realized, situation to situation, that there is something bigger and stronger that is actually creating these situations or making me be in these situations. As long as things happen according to my wishes, my ahankara will not realize there is a need for help. The moment I get into situations that I don't like and I am not able to change them, that is when my ahankara realize that there is something stronger and bigger than me. Something bigger and stronger that controls things that I am not able to control. So naturally the ahankara develops the attitude of surrender and goes towards bhakti. Bhakti towards the higher principle called Ishvara. So I get into a situation where I am not able to make changes, then I surrender. And then I surrender and offer or take the course of bhakti. And that sadhyam, what I am trying to achieve in my life, if I take everything, whatever I want to achieve in my life, Shastras again divide them into only two. They say whatever you want to achieve in life, they can also be divided into two dimensions. One is Sukha Prapti. So I try to achieve these things because these things I think will give me Sukha. Sukha means joy, pleasure. So whatever I want to achieve can be either Sukha Prapti, or the second one could be Dukkha Nivritti. I want to achieve this so as to be able to remove my sorrow, my pain. So I want to achieve these things. So whatever I want to achieve can be classified into two: Sukha Prapti, Dukkha Nivritti. And when I am able to overcome my ahankara, when my mind gets a little matured, we realize that to remove dukkham and to attain sukham, we have to seek the help of Ishvara, who is bigger than our ahankara. And we proceed to worship that Ishvara or Bhagavan. So when do we worship Ishvara or Bhagavan? When we wish for Sukha Prapti or Dukkha Nivritti. Remember, whatever I can achieve through my ahankara, I will not seek the help of Ishvara. We do not. Whatever I think I can achieve myself, I want to cook something today, I will not take the blessings of Ishvara. I want to go walk through that room, I think I can do myself. I don't take the help of Ishvara. I don't surrender to Ishvara. Whatever we think our ahankara is capable of achieving it, we don't seek the help of Ishvara. Only when it is beyond my ahankara, we will seek the help of Ishvara. We have bhakti towards Ishvara. So sadhyam is Sukha Prapti or Dukkha Nivritti. The sadhana, the means here is Ishvara or Bhagavan. So here the Manda Bhakti, Ishvara is the sadhana. Ishvara is the means. So as long as we look upon Ishvara as the means, that love, that bhakti is called as Manda Bhakti. And when we look upon Ishvara as a means, it becomes very conditional. Because what happens? People get angry with Ishvara also. Because I look upon Ishvara so that he will help me to fulfill this Sukha Prapti or Dukkha Nivritti. And if he is not able to help me out there, or if he fails in that, even after I put my application, we reject that Ishvara. And he doesn't do it, we reject it. Some people get angry with Ishvara. Or either they reject Ishvara and stop praying because he has created problems for me, he has not helped me out. Or they will, the moment it has been achieved, they will forget Ishvara. So the moment my end results have achieved, so for you will have to go to the temple for 10 consecutive weeks, do something so that you will get something. So after 10 weeks they get it, they will stop going to the temple afterwards. Or even if the 5th week they get it, some people even stop it there. So the moment the means, the end is achieved, the love for means is lost. This is the first stage of bhakti. And even to get to this stage of bhakti, one needs some maturity. Any person who says most of the people who are having bhakti towards Ishvara are at this stage only. But even at this stage, it requires a lot of maturity. Some people are still with that ahankara, where they think that Ishvara is not responsible. I can manage my own. There is no need for Ishvara in my life. That is totally different. There are some people in that stage also. But once you come here, in this stage, you are still a bhakta. Bhagavan says, even this person is a bhakta of me. And Bhagavan classifies this bhakti as Artha Arthartha Bhakti. In Bhagavad Gita, he classifies them as Artha Arthartha Bhakti in 7th chapter. So people who want freedom from dukkam is known as Artha Bhakti, and people who want sukham is called Arthartha Bhakti. And he says both of them are also my bhaktas. They worship me. So generally most of the bhaktas can be classified into this stage. The first stage of bhakti. And as I said, it is still better than people who believe that their ahankara is bigger than Ishvara. Who do not believe in Ishvara. When compared to those people, these people are much better. This bhakti is also called as Kamya Bhakti, because Bhagavan is the sadhana. This is called as Kamya Bhakti. To achieve certain things, I use Bhagavan. This is still acceptable, because here, at least for the time that he has to achieve the goal, this person surrenders to Ishvara and he trusts Bhagavan or Ishvara will do it for him. So it is still acceptable. This is Manda Bhakti. The second Bhakti is Madhyama Bhakti, the middle Bhakti. Here the people are much rarer. Having to see this kind of people is very rare. Where these people look upon Ishvara not as a means but as an end. So here the Bhagavan, they use Bhagavan as a sadhana, and the sadhyam is also Bhagavan, not Sukha Prati or Dukkha Nivritti. The sadhyam is Bhagavan or Ishvara himself. Sadhanam is Bhagavan, sadhyam is Bhagavan. Here they don't want to attain anything in this world. They don't want sukham. They don't want any nivritti from dukkham. They are matured enough. Their understanding of Ishvara is clearer than the Manda Bhaktas. Their understanding of Ishvara, they are able to choose Ishvara as the goal. Because they know Ishvara represents health, Ishvara represents security, Ishvara represents peace, Ishvara represents happiness. All these comforts, all these things that are worldly things that are going to potentially give me happiness may not give me happiness at all, or may give me happiness only for a short period of time, or even when giving happiness will give me also dukkham at the same time. Whereas Ishvara is going to be my permanent peace, security and happiness. And Ishvara representing all these, I know Ishvara will be the end of my life, is the final goal for myself. And therefore naturally, because this is the love towards the goal, this is much stronger. It is much more intense than the previous one. And this is called as Madhyama Bhakti. This Bhakti is also called as Nishkama Bhakti. we saw that as Kamya Bhakti there. Here it is called as Nishkama Bhakti. For them, these people, they want to attain Bhagavan. They want to attain moksha. Another name for this bhakti is also called as Jignasu Bhakti. It is called as Jignasu Bhakti by Bhagavan in the 7th chapter. Those bhaktis is called as Artha Bhakti. This bhakti, Bhagavan calls this as Jignasu Bhakti. Madhyama Bhakti, where the end is also Ishvara, the goal or end is also Ishvara, the means is also Ishvara. So how does this person does his bhakti? What sort of prayer does he do? He does his prayer, he does his duties properly, without any likes or dislikes, without any complaint or cribbing, and offers everything to Bhagavan Ishvara, which is Karma Yoga. He does not want to get any name, he does not want to get any fame, he does not want to get any money. As in, money will come, but he is not working towards it. It is not that they are not going to get any money. Name, fame, power, position is not what they are working for. They might get it, they may not get it, but he will not be working for it. He just wants to attain Bhagavan. He will get those things as side benefits, but his focus will not be on those. Because for him, he knows to attain Bhagavan, one needs to have a clean mind, pure mind, and therefore he will be working towards that. He too will have his own sick situations, painful situations. And when he gets into these painful situations, he may also pray for the removal of these situations. Not because he wants to have bhoga, not because he wants to experience worldly pleasure or to get worldly achievements, but he wants the sickness to go because so that he can pray to Ishvara much better. He wants to get his ailments done so that he can go for pilgrimage, so that he can sit and meditate upon Ishvara without any pain. So he might ask for those things so that he is able to pray to Ishvara and reach Ishvara without obstacles. For example, all our Upanishads Shanti mantras, they ask for good health, good eyesight, good hearing, long life for our jiva and all those things. Badram karne vishruniyama devaha, badram pashe makshabir yajatraha. So there are Shantipata mantras which ask for these things. So it is nothing wrong in asking these things, but if it is for the purpose of achieving Ishvara as the goal. Otherwise we can people ask for these from Ishvara to achieve worldly benefits. That is Manda Bhakti. This one is Madhyama Bhakti, Nishkama Bhakti. So when we do puja or dhyana, we take sankalpa. Mamo Bhakta Samasta Dodaksha Dvara Sri Parameshwara Prityartam. And then we say what are the things we want to get. And there if we say Ayura Ishvarya, Siddhartham, Praptyartham, all those things, we are using Ishvara as a means because we are looking for good life, wealth and all those things. If we do that, then it becomes the sankalpa is for sukha prapti or dukkha nivritti. But if we say jnana vairagya siddhyartham, then we are looking forwards to get Ishvara as our goal. We are having Ishvara as the goal. The sankalpa is to attain Bhagavan, then it is called as Jignasu Bhakti or Nishkama Bhakti. The third one, the last one, is Uttama Bhakti. This is the best Bhakti. It is the most rarest form of love, the most intense form of love, where this person does not look upon Ishvara as the means, does not look upon Ishvara as the end, but Ishvara to be non-different from self. To recognize Ishvara not as a sadhyam, not as a sadhanam, but as a siddha vastu. To recognize Ishvara as Atma. Soham asmi. In our scriptures we say Soham asmi. Means that the Ishvara is definitely, essentially not different from me. The Ishvara and the self are identical. And this love is, love towards Ishvara is equal to self-love. It is the most intense form of love, Uttama Bhakti. And who can do this kind of love? Only a jnani, only a person who has completed this jnana yoga as a sadhana, only who has attained moksha can claim this bhakti. And this is known as Jnana Lakshana Bhakti. In Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavan calls this in chapter 12 as Para Bhakti. A person who is able to identify himself as Ishvara. So, Manda Bhakti Ishvara is dear, Madhyama Bhakti Ishvara is dearer, Uttama Bhakti Ishvara is the dearest. Bhagavan explains this bhakti in the 7th and the 12th chapters of Gita. So this is the first meaning of bhakti. We said bhakti has got two meanings. One is devotion, which we saw. The second one is bhakti yoga, as a course of discipline to attain moksha. How is bhakti yoga? What is it? What is the course of that we have to do to attain moksha? We will see that in the next class. Any questions? Questions, comments, or anything? Okay. I don't see anybody typing anything, so we'll see again in the next class. If you have any questions, you can always type in the chat box. We'll try to answer them in the next class. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Swasti Prajabhyah Paripalayantam Nyayena Margena Mahim Mahishaha. Gobhramanebhyo Shubhamastu Nityam Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namah.